After being excluded from family events for years, I quietly paid off their entire mortgage without a word, then left the deed with a note that said, "You never had to break me to learn my worth." I'm Rhea Linwood, 47, born and raised in Asheville, North Carolina. I was 8 years old the first time I remember feeling like I was more of a buffer than a daughter. My parents, Martha and Simon Linwood, were both teachers in Asheville. Mom taught 5th grade at the same elementary school all three of us kids went to. Dad was a high school science teacher. We lived in a red brick house near Biltmore Village, where the porches all looked the same and the neighborhood kids shared their bikes like currency. On paper, we were an all-American family. Church on Sundays, dinner at 6 o'clock, matching Christmas pajamas. But behind closed doors, things were colder. Subtler. My mother had a sharp tongue and a distant way of doling out affection, conditional and always earned. My father rarely stood up to her. Instead, he'd smile and change the subject or go outside to trim the hedges when things got tense. My younger siblings, Justine and Toby, were everything I wasn't: loud, charismatic, and seemingly adored for it. They could mess up and be forgiven instantly. Justine got pregnant at 17 and my mom threw her a baby shower. Toby dropped out of college and still got a "we're proud of you" dinner. I got straight A's, graduated summa cum laude, started my own business, and I was told I was trying too hard. I remember when I got my first job offer at a tech startup in Durham. I called home, expecting something, anything. My mom's response? "So you won't be coming home for Easter, then?" That was it. No congratulations. No "we're proud of you." Just a casual guilt trip. Still, I kept showing up. 4 birthdays. 4 funerals. For Toby's second divorce and Justine's third baby. I sent gifts. I helped with bills when money got tight. I even helped with the down payment on Justine's car once, no questions asked. But slowly, I started noticing I was never asked to come home for anything celebratory. My mother would say things like, "Well, we didn't think you'd want to be around all the noise," or "You're so busy with work, we didn't want to bother you." I was always good enough to fix a crisis. Never good enough for cake and candles. The final straw came after my father died suddenly of a heart attack. I was the one who flew home, took charge of the arrangements, handled the finances, and sat in silence while my mother nitpicked the eulogy I wrote. The day after the funeral, I heard her on the phone with Justine through the paper-thin walls of our house. She said, "Rhea's just doing this so she can feel important. She always needs to be the center of attention." That shattered me. And none of them, tried to explain, apologize, or reach out afterward. I stopped calling. I stopped sending gifts. They didn't ask where I went. Years passed. My business in Durham took off. I invested in the right partnerships, kept my team small, and within 6 years, I had a steady stream of clients and a healthy 7-figure income. I bought a modest but beautiful craftsman home tucked against a quiet stretch of woods. I adopted a rescue dog, Kip, and built a little life for myself. Quiet, warm, safe. But the ache of being discarded by my own family never fully left me. It showed up at odd times, in the middle of a client meeting, walking through a bookstore, hearing a song my father used to hum when mowing the lawn. Then one day, out of nowhere, a neighbor from back home, Mrs. Ransley, who used to bring over lemon bars when we were kids, sent me a Christmas card. Tucked inside was a handwritten note: "Your mother's house is in rough shape, sweetheart. I worry about her. She's behind on the mortgage, from what I hear. Thought you should know. Hope you're well." I stared at that note for hours. At first, I laughed. The same people who threw me away were now facing the consequences of a life built on favoritism and denial. My first instinct was, honestly, good. Let them figure it out without me. But something shifted. Not out of guilt. Not even pity. Just clarity. They had tried to erase me from the family narrative. But they couldn't erase what I was capable of. And they sure as hell couldn't take away my power, not anymore. So I made a few phone calls. I still had their address memorized. I still knew the tax parcel number of the property. I pulled the mortgage info, contacted the lender, and found out the balance. It wasn't astronomical, but it was clearly unmanageable for my mother on a retired teacher's income. I spoke to an attorney in Asheville. Told him exactly what I wanted to do. Pay off the mortgage. Transfer the deed into my mother's name outright. No liens. No caveats. Just clean and done. But I also wanted to leave a message. Something simple. Something clear. I bought a thick ivory envelope and folded the new deed into it. I included a handwritten note. It said, "You never had to break me to learn my worth. I see it now. You don't have to." No name. No signature. I waited until a Sunday when I knew they'd be out. It was late spring. Everything in Asheville was blooming. I parked around the corner, walked up to the house, and slipped the envelope into the mailbox. I didn't linger. I didn't even look back. I drove straight to the airport and flew home. And then I waited. Not because I wanted to thank you, but because a small part of me still hoped someone would call. Ask why. Say they were sorry. Acknowledge me. No one did. Not for weeks. Then months. Eventually, I heard from an old classmate that Toby had moved back home to help out. Justine was living in Atlanta. The house had gotten a fresh coat of paint. The foreclosure signs never showed up again. But still, no calls. No cards. No thank you. And strangely, that was the most freeing part of it all. Because I realized the power wasn't in their response, it was in my act. Quiet, deliberate, unconditional. I had turned their silence into something that couldn't be ignored. A permanent reminder of what they lost when they turned their backs on me. They don't get to rewrite history without remembering who held the pen. They say time softens things, but in my experience, time just reveals what was already written underneath. I kept waiting for that revelation to come in the form of a letter. An awkward voicemail. A knock at the door. Anything that might show they had wrestled with what I'd done, what it meant. But no. There was only silence. I won't lie and say I didn't check my phone more often than usual that first month. Or that I didn't scroll through Justine's Instagram, looking for even a whiff of acknowledgement. She had always been online, always posting some chaotic stream of filtered selfies, baby pictures, and vague, dramatic quotes about family being everything. There it was, a blurry photo of her, standing in front of the old house, captioned, "Back to where it all began. Grateful for new beginnings." Two hearts, nothing about how that beginning had been salvaged by the sister she ignored. Another post showed my mom's front porch with the words, "Finally ours," and a string of emojis. That one stung in a way I hadn't expected. Not because I wanted credit, but because the lie behind it was so galling. It had always been ours. And now it was only theirs, thanks to me. At first, I told myself it didn't matter. That this was the closure I needed. But the truth was, it kept me up at night sometimes. Not the deed itself, but the lack of anything real in return. I didn't need an apology. I just wanted recognition. About 3 months after I left the envelope, I ran into Mrs. Ransley again. She was visiting family in Durham and stopped by my office, unannounced, holding a container of oatmeal cookies and wearing the same floral perfume she'd worn when I was 12. She sat in my office chair like she'd always belonged there. "I know what you did," she said, setting the cookies down gently. "And I know you don't want anyone's approval, but I think you should know, they're spinning it." "Spinning what?" I asked, though I already had an idea. She tilted her head. "Your mother's telling people she got some miracle inheritance from a cousin in Roanoke. Says she used it to clear the mortgage." Toby backed it up. I let out a short, breathless laugh. Not from humor. Just disbelief. "Of course she is. You don't look surprised," she said. "I'm not." She reached out, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "That house still carries your fingerprints. No matter what story they tell." That night, I sat on my porch with Kip sleeping by my feet and a blanket draped around my shoulders. The spring air was cooler than expected, and the sky looked clear all the way to the edge of the trees. I thought about legacy, not the kind built on money or name plaques, but the invisible kind. The kind no one ever really sees unless they're looking closely. The kind built on what you do, not what you say. I started thinking about the stories we tell ourselves to survive. My mother told herself that I was cold. Unfeeling. That I didn't need the love she saved for the others. Toby told himself I was just too independent. Justine told herself I thought I was better than them. But none of that had ever been true. I was the one who stayed late to do the dishes. Who cleaned up Justine's vomit when she drank too much at 17. Who lied to the school board for Toby when he got caught selling fake Adderall? Who paid the bills when mom's pension dried up and her pride wouldn't let her admit it? And when they turned their backs, I didn't lash out. I didn't publish family secrets or write letters full of fury. I didn't cut the brakes on their fantasy of being decent people. I just did something they couldn't ignore. And now, every time they step through that front door, open a cupboard, or turn on a light, they're standing in a gift they'll never acknowledge. Sometimes, that knowledge is enough. But sometimes I still wonder what it would feel like to hear my name spoken with gratitude. Or even honesty. One day, I got an email from a name I hadn't seen in decades, Elias Howard. He had been my high school boyfriend, someone I hadn't thought of in years. He said he was in Durham for a conference, had seen my business online, and wanted to meet for coffee just to catch up. Curious, and maybe a little nostalgic, I agreed. We met at a small cafe off 9th Street. He looked older, of course, thinner hair, softer jaw, but his eyes were the same. Warm and knowing. We talked about everything except the thing I knew was coming. We danced around it, sipping our drinks and chuckling over old teachers, until he finally said, "I still talk to my aunt, your mom's friend Marla." "Oh?" "She told me what you did. About the mortgage. She was shocked you'd do that for them after the way they treated you." I just stared at my drink. I didn't need this conversation. But I didn't stop it either. "She said your mom was bragging about how it worked out in the end. That everything landed where it should." That phrase hit like a slap. Landed where it should? I nearly stood up and left. But instead, I leaned back and said, "You know what's funny? I never thought I'd do something that generous and still feel like I was being erased." Elias didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe the point wasn't what they felt. Maybe the point was proving to yourself you could do it." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He looked at me like he understood, and maybe he did. Maybe we all come from broken places and spend the rest of our lives deciding whether to fix or flee them. When I got home that night, there was a small white envelope in my mailbox. No return address. My heart caught in my throat. Inside was a note, hastily written in my mother's familiar tight scrawl, "I know what you did. I don't know why you did it. But I suppose it's like you said once, some debts can't be repaid." I stood on my porch for a long time with that note in my hand. No apology. No warmth. But it was something. A crack in the armor. Maybe not a bridge, but a step toward one. I tucked the note into a drawer, next to my original one. The one I left with the deed. The one they pretended not to receive. And in that moment, I knew something had shifted. Not for them. For me. I didn't reply to my mother's note. Not out of spite, but because I wasn't sure there was anything left to say. For decades, I'd been trapped in a loop with them, trying, retreating, trying again. Every time I offered a piece of myself, they turned it into a test. And now that I had stepped out of that loop, I wasn't going to let a few cryptic sentences pull me back in. Still, the note stayed on my mind longer than I expected. I found myself replaying it like a puzzle I couldn't quite finish. Some debts can't be repaid. What did she mean by that? Was it guilt? Was it a veiled thank you? Or was it just another half measure, enough to ease her conscience without giving me the one thing I'd always wanted, accountability? About a month later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something in me said I should. "Ria," came a male voice, low and unsure. I froze. I hadn't heard Toby's voice in nearly 6 years. "It's me. I know it's been a long time." I stayed silent. "I'm not calling to fight," he added quickly. I wanted to say something. If you'll let me." I sat down at my kitchen table, Kip curled under my feet. "Go ahead," I said, my voice flat. He exhaled slowly. "I know about the house. Justine doesn't, not really. And Mom, she won't talk about it. But I saw the paperwork. I know what you did." Another pause. I could hear traffic in the background. I don't know what to say except, "I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. Those 2 words. They'd seemed so impossible for so long, it felt strange to hear them spoken out loud. "I should have stuck up for you," he continued. "Back then. When Dad died, when Mom started freezing you out. I saw it happening, but I didn't stop. It was easier to go along with it. Why? I asked before I could stop myself. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, because I didn't want to be next. Because I was scared. Because she made it easy to believe that you didn't care. And maybe because part of me was jealous. Jealous? You always had your act together. Even when they ignored you. I couldn't take it. So I told myself you thought you were better than us. That made it easier to keep my distance. His honesty hit harder than I expected. For the first time in years, I heard something real from someone in that house. It didn't undo the years of hurt, but it chipped away at the wall. I never thought I was better, I said quietly. I just wanted to be treated like I mattered. I know, he said. I see that now. And I'm sorry I didn't see it when it counted. We talked for another 15 minutes. Nothing heavy. Just little things. What I'd been up to. How the business was doing. He mentioned that he'd gone back to school, online classes, and was trying to get his HVAC certification. Good for you, I said, and meant it. Before we hung up, he added one more thing. Mom won't admit it, but I think what you did with the house shook her. Not because of the money. Because it forced her to see you. And she doesn't know how to sit with that. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just murmured, thanks for calling. Take care of yourself, Rhea. After the call, I sat still. It wasn't a relief. Not quite peace either. But something had shifted. For so long, I had existed in the shadows of that family, as the forgotten one, the dutiful one, the outsider who never quite belonged. But now, for better or worse, they couldn't deny my presence. I had etched myself into the foundation of that house, literally and symbolically. A few weeks later, I was walking Kip through our usual trail, the sunlight cutting through the canopy above us, when my phone buzzed with a text. It was a photo from an unknown number. I opened it to see the front porch of the old house. It had been freshly painted. Hanging by the door was a wooden sign that read, "Bless this home." I stared at it for a long time before I noticed the small plaque nailed just beneath the mailbox. In memory of Simon Linwood, who built this home on love, loyalty, and strength. There was no mention of Martha. No mention of any of us, really. Just him. And for the first time, I felt something different toward my mother, not anger, not bitterness, but a dull ache of sadness. She'd spent her whole life rewriting the story to protect her version of it. And in doing so, she'd erased more than just me. She'd erased herself. A few days after that, I received a letter in the mail. Not a note. A full letter. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, addressed in my mother's unmistakable script. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside, the letter was only a few paragraphs. But they were heavy. Rhea, I know you don't owe me anything, not now, not ever. But I've been sitting with what you did, and what it means. I was cruel. I see that now. Not just in what I said, but in what I didn't say. What I withheld. You always showed up, even when I made you feel like you weren't wanted. I don't know why. Maybe because you're better than I am. The truth is, I saw too much of myself in you. The independence, the sharpness, the need to be right. And that scared me. I didn't know how to love that part of you, so I punished it. I punished you. I can't take back the years. I can't ask you to forgive me. But I want you to know that I know. You never had to prove your worth. You were always enough. Martha, I folded the letter slowly and set it down on the table. Then I walked out onto the porch, Kip trailing behind me, and sat in the rocking chair as the sky turned shades of amber and rose. For a long time, I said nothing. The apology didn't fix everything. The damage couldn't be undone with ink and paper. But it mattered. It meant someone finally saw me. I wasn't erased. I was a page they couldn't tear out anymore. And for the first time, that truth felt like a kind of power I hadn't known I was waiting for. I didn't respond to the letter. Not right away. I kept it in a drawer by my bed, alongside the one I had written and left with the deed. Every now and then I'd reread it, half waiting to feel something profound or redemptive. But the truth was, even a heartfelt apology can only go so far when it's built on decades of absence. Words were not a bridge. They were, at best, a belated signal flare from a place I had already left behind. Still, I allowed myself the grace to stop being angry. That, in itself, felt like a kind of revenge. Not because it let them off the hook, but because it let me off it. Time passed. I kept running my company, walking Kip through the woods, and filling my days with purpose and peace. I dated a little, nothing serious, but for the first time, I didn't feel like I was trying to prove anything to anyone. I had already proven the only thing that mattered: I had worth, with or without their love. But life has a funny way of circling back. It started with a phone call from a real estate agent. A man named Leo Ramsey, based in Asheville. He left a message saying he was representing a buyer who was interested in acquiring properties in my old neighborhood. One in particular, my mother's house. He had no idea it used to be my childhood home. Or that I'd paid off the mortgage. I didn't return the call. A week later, I got another. This time, Leo's tone had changed. "Ms. Linwood," he said, "I wanted to let you know that your name appears on some of the legal documentation tied to the deed transfer. Nothing binding, it's just that your name came up in the title history, and the buyer's legal team flagged it. The buyer, as it turns out, is your sister." That got my attention. Justine was trying to buy the house. From our mother. For what Leo described as a family preservation project. I nearly laughed. The same sister who hadn't spoken a word to me in nearly a decade was now trying to brand our childhood home as some legacy site? For what, her Instagram followers? I called Leo back. "I'm not interested in interfering," I said. "But if you're telling me she's trying to rewrite history, then I want to know the full picture." He hesitated. Then said, "Would you like to see the proposal she submitted to the city council?" The city council. Apparently, Justine was applying for a local grant to refurbish the house as a community history site. She'd written a glowing statement about her family's roots in the Asheville education system, her father's role in mentoring young scientists, and her mother's selfless dedication to her children. There was no mention of me. Not a single line. I felt the heat rise in my chest. I closed the file, stood up from my chair, and paced. Not because I wanted to take the house from her. Not because I wanted to stop the project. Because I wanted the truth told. The real story. I took a few days to think. Then I called my lawyer in Asheville, the same one who helped me pay off the mortgage years ago, and explained the situation. "Technically," he said, "the house is now your mother's free and clear. But if Justine's using public funds to back this story, and omitting a material contributor, that's misrepresentation. And if she's applying for state or local funds, it's even more serious. What can I do about it?" "Well," he said slowly, "you can submit a counterstatement. You have receipts. You have letters. And the city council loves documentation. They hate being embarrassed. If the project goes through with her lies intact, and someone finds out later, the whole thing could blow back on them." So that's what I did. I didn't sue. I didn't threaten. I wrote a formal letter addressed to the city, including a full history of the property's financial records, the payoff documents, and the anonymous note I had left with the deed. I included the recent letter from my mother, only the parts relevant to the mortgage, and attached a simple, calm statement: "I don't object to my family preserving the house. But it is wrong to erase the contributions of someone simply because they didn't fit the narrative. If this home is to be preserved as a legacy, it should include the full legacy, truthfully." I signed my name and attached a single photograph, me, age 12, standing in the front yard, holding a rake with leaves piled high around me. The only one who had bothered to clean up that fall. 3 weeks later, I got an email from a city clerk. Justine's proposal had been declined. The reason listed: lack of verifiable documentation and material omissions from applicant's narrative. Short. Professional. Devastating. But it didn't stop there. Word got around. Asheville's a small city with long memories. The local paper ran a story about the council decision, and while no names were published, the people who needed to know, knew. A week after the article came out, I got a voicemail. Justine's voice. Sharp. Bitter. "I hope you're happy. You always did like being the martyr. Congratulations, you won." I didn't call back. She wasn't wrong, exactly. But she wasn't right either. I hadn't won. I'd just shown up, in the way none of them ever expected I would. With facts. With history. With proof. They wanted the story of the house to be one of love, perseverance, and family triumph. What they got instead was the truth. That house was saved not by their loyalty, but by the one they cast out. The one they ignored. Me. The sign on the porch was taken down a few weeks later. Bless this home. It disappeared quietly. No new sign took its place. I still walk by that house sometimes when I'm in Asheville on business. I keep my distance, never linger. But I see it. And I know that inside those walls, beneath the layers of paint and years of silence, my mark is still there. Not as a footnote. Not as a tragedy. But as a reminder, you never had to break me to learn my worth. But now, you never get to forget it either.